Reading with your kids.
Hey, so great to see you. Come on in. Hi, my name is Jed Lee, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are so excited to be coming to you today from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so very happy that you decided to be part of our Reading with Your Kids family. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on iHeartRadio, wherever you find your podcasts at. We don't want you to miss an episode. We have a great guest for you today. She's the author of The True History of Lyndie B. Hawkins. Her name is Gail Shepherd. Hey, for all the authors that are listening out there, I wanted to share with you this great email that we received here at the Reading with Your Kids podcast from Dr. Lyndie Mubarak. She is a past guest and the author of Maxine's New Job. Here's the email. Dear Fatima and Jed, good news! Maxine's New Job has been nominated to receive the prestigious Henri Award at the 2018 Christian Literacy Awards for Outstanding Literacy Work in the Children's Book Division. I sincerely believe your certifying Maxine as a great read helped bring increased social media attention to the book. Thank you for the exposure and the great marketing. We are so happy for Dr. Lyndie Mubarak that her book, Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read, Maxine's New Job, received this prestigious recognition. We would love to help your book receive that same kind of recognition. If you are interested in having your book considered for our Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read program, please visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. You can click on the contact button, send us a note, and we'll send all the information back to you, or you can go right to our Certified Great Read page on our website. It's fun, it's easy, and it is really an effective way to let the world know that your book stands out above all the rest. The Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read program. Joining us on the line right now in southern Florida, where it's a lot warmer than it is here in Boston. She is the author of a great new book that is debuting today on my birthday. The name of the book is The True History of Lyndie B. Hawkins. Please welcome to the show, Gail Shepherd. Gail, welcome to the show.
Hey, it's great to be here, Jed.
Thanks very much for being on the show. We're excited to have you here. Tell us a little bit about the true history of Lyndie B. Hawkins, please.
Okay. Well, this book is about a 12-year-old girl who her hobby is learning about history. She's kind of a history nerd. And, if you're interested in history, if you want the truth about history, you kind of have to dig down underneath the surface to figure out what's really going on. And her father is a Vietnam vet, and he loses his job, and they have to go live with her strict Southern grandmother, whose name is Lady. And Lady is one of those Southern women who really doesn't think you should ever share family secrets. She thinks everything should be sort of pushed under the surface, and she doesn't want to talk about anything that's real. And Lyndie comes to know over time that there's something really wrong with her daddy. He's, like I said, he's a Vietnam vet, and he has started acting strangely. He paces, he stays up late at night, he can't sleep, and finally at one point he disappears for about 3 or 4 days. Nobody knows where he is. So Lyndie's, in the course of this novel, what happens is she has to fight with her grandmother a little bit to get at the truth of what's going on with her daddy. And in the course of that, she learns to express her own truth, to find out what's going on with her family. That's related to what's happening in her town and also what's happening in her country. And so that's the main gist of the book. Part of the reason that I was really interested in writing this book is right now in the United States, we're dealing with a lot of these same issues where there's a lot of talk about what's true and what isn't true. There's a lot of talk about certain ways that we look at history. The Civil War is a really big topic right now, and that's actually Lyndie's area of expertise. That's what she's interested in, is the Civil War. So the book is kind of a commentary on what it means to look for the truth and and how much you share with outsiders or strangers, what it means to be loyal to your own family, and, what it means to be loyal to your country in some ways as well.
Mm-hmm. Super. I love books that can inspire kids to really kind of dig into history. I was one of those kids, I love history, but I hated learning. I hated history class.
Right.
Going in and, you got to memorize this and it's dry and just, but when you meet a character, whether it's a fictional character or, a historical character, and then experience the history through that character and through these, real life situations, it makes it come alive, and it makes it, much more meaningful for me, and I think for a lot of folks.
Sure. And, history is really just a bunch of stories. Mm-hmm. And, the way that we've traditionally taught history is probably not the best way. But I think that that's changing now. I think, teachers who are in the classroom teaching history now are taking a really different approach than maybe we were in school, which, as you said, was memorizing a lot of dates and facts. Mm-hmm. That takes all the joy out of it. When you look at history as a series of stories, and also as a series of stories that aren't necessarily the absolute truth, because anyone who's looking back at history is going to have their own filter on it, right? And so that's something that Lyndie understands too. She understands that the history that she's learning, there's always a story beneath the story. And so that's what she's always looking into. That resonates with her own family stories as well, because she knows that the official history of her family is not necessarily the whole story.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's, as you said, that's a really important discussion to have with our kids, especially our middle grade kids, our high school kids, about, what is quote unquote history and how accurate it is, and how we need to kind of consider where we're getting our history and our news and our information from, especially nowadays, because we're living at a time where I've seen statistics that say that most people get their information from Facebook and late night talk shows, so comedians. And,
right.
It's like, and people don't understand that those comedians, that, they're trying to make points and they're trying to share some information, but they're mainly trying to make you laugh. So if,
right.
Exactly. and the laughter comes before the accuracy. So that's, and Facebook is as much fun as it is. It's a really sketchy place to get your news and information.
Yeah, and one of the things that was really fun about writing this book was it's set in 1985, so it's actually before all the social media. Mm-hmm. And, I was kind of growing up in the 1980s. I was older than Lyndie at that time, but, she does stuff like goes to the library and talks to her librarian and starts to look through microfilm to find out the information that she's looking for. And in a way, it was kind of refreshing to be able to step out of our current climate where you have so much information coming at you all the time that it's really hard to process, and just sort of remember what it was like when, like, I remember as a kid being able to call the library and ask the librarian any question that I had. And the librarian would go and look it up for me. Mm-hmm. And, sometimes she would say, hold on, and I'll go look and come back. And other times she would say, you know what, I'm going to have to investigate this and I'll call you back. But that seems so quaint now, doesn't it? To think mm-hmm. about being able to actually call a librarian. I mean, I guess it was an early form of Google for us.
But it was a much more personal form of Google, with someone that you could actually see and have a relationship with.
Right. And a lot of us during that time too, we had like a whole set of World Book encyclopedias, and that mm-hmm. would be something that you would just pour through for days and days, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Another early form of Google.
Yep. Yeah. You're bringing back lots of great memories. I do remember those, the microfiche and, rolling, the thing and, all this information flashing before your eyes and, needing to go back and forth and find the dates. And, It's just amazing. I think if you explain to a kid that, your local newspaper, a whole year's worth of newspaper was on this piece of film and you could scroll through it. And that seems amazing and hard to believe today.
Yeah, it does. It was a little more work. It was a little bit slower than just going to Google. But, what was interesting about that process too is that it really gave you time to, to process what you were reading. The problem for me with Google, and I use Google all the time, I'm not knocking it, but, the problem for me is that you tend to scroll through a lot of information really fast. And so you don't get that kind of slower, deeper experience of research, which can be really pleasurable.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that I think a lot of adults aren't really, they may know it in the back of their mind, but they're not conscious of every time, is oftentimes when you do a Google search, the first 5, 6, 10 results that pop up are advertisements or, a company that paid to get their post pushed up to the top. So it may not, just because it's on the top, it may not be the best source for your information.
Sure. And I think this is a your first Google search is not necessarily research. There's more to it than that.
Yeah. What inspired you to write the true history of Lyndie B. Hawkins?
Well, I tend to get a lot of my ideas from stories that people tell me about their own childhoods, and that was the case for this book. Although the story turned out very different from the original. I had a friend whose father was a veteran, and he definitely had PTSD. And at the time, PTSD wasn't as recognized as it is now. People knew there was something wrong, but they didn't really have a name for it always. They didn't know how to help somebody who had PTSD. And so that was what she grew up with. And that story really stuck with me for years and years. I wrote it first as an adult book, and then, years later, I wrote it as a middle grade. The main character was always 12 in both versions. But the story's changed quite a lot from what she told me, but that was the original spark for it. And that's been the spark for a lot of my stories, actually, is somebody has told me something about their childhood, and I just started to go from there. My mind started to go.
It's interesting that one of the important relationships in the book is with a young guy who is just coming out of a juvenile detention facility.
Yeah, she has a friend, her good friend DB. Well, he becomes a good friend over time, but he comes to live with her best friend, Dawn, and his name is DB. And he's a kid who's really been through the ringer. He was abandoned as a child. He was in foster care. He accidentally sets his foster care home on fire. And because of that, he ends up in juvenile detention. And so he's out for a year kind of on probation. And he's actually a pretty sunny character considering everything that he's been through. And at the beginning of the book, Lyndie is very secretive. She's hiding a lot of information, and he kind of gets her to open up. And I love their relationship, actually. It's one of my favorite parts of the book is their interactions with each other. Their repartee is funny and sweet and reminded me of what it's like to have a best friend of the opposite sex. There's no romance involved or anything, but they're really best friends, and it's just one of those sort of sweet 12-year-old friendships that probably a lot of us remember.
And it's interesting how, most likely in coming to know DB and learning his backstory and learning that, he isn't the sum of his mistakes, probably helped Lyndie see her father and her family in a different light.
Sure. Yeah. That's definitely part of it. He gets her to see things that, like she is really fighting with her grandmother, and he DB actually likes her grandmother. He thinks she's really cool. So, and I remember that from my own childhood. My friend would come over and go, "Oh my gosh, your parents are so cool." And I would be like, "What are you talking about? They are not." So, but having an outside perspective on your family like that can really change the way you see things. So he definitely does do that for her.
Yeah. What is it about writing for middle grade audiences that you love so much?
Oh, it's just such a great age. I mean, I remember the years when I was 10, 11, 12 as being some of the freest years I ever had, because you're not as self-conscious. You're somewhat self-conscious. Of course, we all are always, but it's nothing like the self-consciousness that kicks in once you become a teenager. Mm-hmm. So you're free to explore whatever your weird passions are. Like a lot of times 10 and 11 or 12-year-old kids are really, I hate to use the word nerdy because it has negative connotations, but they're really intensely interested in something. Mm-hmm. And I love that feeling at that age. And I love writing about that. I love conveying it in my books. That sense of wonder that kids have at that age, where the whole world seems open to them, and they're often incredibly creative. They're often, like I said, pursuing the strangest kinds of interests. They'll be like interested in stones or something, or, bugs, or like my little nephew, Legos for days, just mm-hmm. building Legos all day long. But I think that's really cool. And, teenagers, unfortunately, lose some of that, especially girls do. When you turn about 13, 14, your world sort of starts to shift a little bit, and you kind of have to be cooler. It's more important to be cool. But middle grade kids don't need to be cool, and I love that about them.
Here we're coming up on the end of Women's Month, and we talk about women who inspire us. And how do you think Lyndie can inspire girls?
Well, she is a really sassy character. She does not give in easily. She's got a stubborn streak. She's very independent. She definitely doesn't take received wisdom. She doesn't just accept received wisdom. She's always looking deeper into things. And she knows how to hold her own. Like her grandmother, Lady, what's funny about their relationship is, Lady is also very strong-willed, and they share a lot of characteristics. But of course, neither of them really sees that in each other until the end. Like towards the end of the book, then they start to get it. Yeah, we're actually much more alike than we are different. Mm-hmm. So, to get back to your question, I think that, what would inspire girls about Lyndie is just that she knows how to stand up for herself, and she doesn't back down when she believes in something. She's willing to pursue, the knowledge that she's trying to get to the very bitter end.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's something that hopefully both young women and young men can be inspired by, that whole idea of kind of going for what you want, understanding what it is that you want, and having the strength and courage to go for it.
Sure. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So tell us some of the other projects that you are working on right now, or that we want to check out.
Okay. So I'm actually working on my second book. Right now I'm in the middle of it, and like Lyndie, it's a historical novel. This one's set in 1937, so it's earlier. But it was inspired by stories that my mother told me. And she grew up in Central Florida, and in the middle of a sort of barren area that was it wasn't barren, it was heavily forested. And her grandfather ran a sawmill and named the town after their family. And so, and of course she had a lot of freedom. It was 1937, so she just kind of ran wild in the woods and in the swamps. And so that was the kernel of what sort of inspired the story. And so I'm working on that. I'm about halfway through, and I'm also planning to start writing some podcast stories with my sister, collaborating with my sister, just doing kids stories, like half-hour kids stories.
Cool.
We haven't started that yet, but we're kind of talking it over.
That's great. I love this. I love that you're working to make history come alive and help kids, kind of look at their lives today through the lens of history. So not only getting to know about history, but also kind of applying it and, taking those kind of age-old, never dying kind of nuggets of wisdom and applying them to life today.
Yeah. Looking at history. Right. Looking at history through a lens gives you a little bit of distance. Like, you can apply it to things that are happening now, but it gives you the distance to have a different kind of perspective on what's happening now, which is nice. Because you feel like you're seeing things a bit more broadly. And, I guess it would be kind of hard for me to write contemporary, I think, because, I feel like I'm too close to it. Mm-hmm. And so writing historical novels gives me the distance that I need to be able to see the present more clearly, I guess.
Yeah. One of the things that we're going to want to know is where we can find out more about you and your books and where we can connect with you on the net.
Okay. Well, my website has just about everything that you need. And the website is GailShepherdAuthor.com. And I'm also on Twitter, and I'm on Facebook, and I'm on Instagram.
Excellent. And the book is out today. We're celebrating, getting close to the end of International Women's Month, and hopefully folks will just keep those lessons and work to empower women throughout the year, throughout every year. But we want everybody to check out The True History of Lyndie B. Hawkins. It has been released today, and we've been talking to the author, Gail Page Shepherd. Gail, thanks so much for being with us today.
Oh, thank you, Jed. It was really a pleasure to be with you, and I enjoyed it.
Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We'll be taking a trip to the school dentist. That's right, Katie Malko will be here to tell us all about her Pa Elementary Roxy's adventures to the school dentist. It might say March on the calendar, but summer is right around the corner, and we are looking for a few great summer camps, a few great libraries to host our all-new family experience Reading with Your Kids Live. That's right, we're looking to celebrate our shared love of reading and learning with fantastic storytelling, amazing magic, and lots of totally interactive fun. We're even going to do our best to find some great kids in your community to feature on future episodes of the podcast. You can check it all out at our website, readingwithyourkids.com/live. Hey, we want to thank Gail Page Shepherd for joining us today. We want to thank Fatima Khan, my amazing associate producer, for everything she does to make this show as wonderful as it is. And of course, we want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very, very much for making the world a better place by taking the time to read with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.